Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Excellent job, Jessica, as always, with the lead in, getting us ready for this week's top 25 poll. And folks, we had some shakeups from last week's poll to this week based on the results from last week's game. So, welcome in once again, everyone. Senior analyst and founder of the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, Kenneth, and I have you for, we're going to say about the next half hour. We may run a little bit long, may try to add in a few news and notes about the season that we've seen so far. So buckle up because we're about to jump right in. So for everyone that's either watching on YouTube or streaming us on Twitter, want to say thank you for doing so. If you're listening to us in podcast form, I'm going to go over last week's top 25 poll, as we had one team fall out of the poll from last week to this week, and that was number 17, James Madison. With their loss last weekend, that gives them 2 losses on the season. That, as an FCS team, will get you bounced from the top 25. So let's start with number 25 and work our way up to number 20. And this is from last week. LSU was 25th, followed by Navy, Ole Miss, Kansas State, and Texas A&M checked in at the number 21 spot. Going from 20 to 11, coming in at number 20 was UNLV, followed by Boise State, SMU, James Madison, Army checked in at 16, Missouri at 15, Clemson at 14, Tennessee at 13, BYU at 12, Pitt at 11. Checking in inside of the top 10, we found Notre Dame checked in at number 10, followed by Georgia at number 9, Penn State at 8, Ohio State at 7, Alabama at 6, Iowa State at 5, Miami at 4, America's team, Indiana at number 3. Number 2 was Oregon, and the number 1 team in the country last year for us was the Texas Longhorns. We know that we had some results that impacted those rankings. So let's jump into this week's top 25. And making their first appearance inside of the top 25, we find the Washington State Cougars. Washington State coming off of a 42-10 win over Hawaii, good enough to make their first appearance in our top 25. Checking in at number 24 this week, we find the Ole Miss Rebels. Hotty toddy, everybody. Lane Kiffin needs to get his team back on track and get rolling in the second half of the season, as they have some games that are absolutely must win each and every week from here on out if they still have any hopes of making the playoffs. Always, when it comes to our Ole Miss Rebels, want to say some quick hellos to everyone listening, all of our friends over at the Rebel Walk, Miss Kathy, Miss Patty, Miss Donna, Ashley. Always thank you, ladies, for all of your support for all of us here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. A lot of work left to be done for your Ole Miss Rebels. We'll see if they're able to really get these wins from here on out and find their way a little bit higher in our top 25, and of course finding their way into that 12-team playoff. Checking in at number 23 this week is the Navy Midshipmen. We know Navy, fresh off of that 51-17 win over Charlotte. Navy still undefeated, and Navy has a big-time showdown coming up this week. So we'll talk about that later on in the show. But fantastic job there by the Navy Midshipmen. You check in at number 23 this week. Up a couple of spots this week, we find the LSU Tigers. LSU checking in at number 22 this week, fresh off of a 34-10 win over Arkansas, getting a much-needed win as their playoff hopes still in the balance here. And as LSU continues to win ball games, you'll see them move up the rankings. They have a big-time matchup this weekend. We're going to talk about their opponent here in just a moment. As we stay in the Southeastern Conference, at number 21, we find the Texas A&M Aggies this week. A&M, fresh off of a 34-24 win over Mississippi State. Solid, not dominant. The question was asked, is Mississippi State getting better, or all these teams taking Mississippi State for granted? I think it's a little bit of both in this situation, but credit for A&M for getting the win, because at this point in the season, all you want to do is go 1-0 each week. Staying right there in the Southeastern Conference. And we find the Missouri Tigers down a few spots this week. As Missouri is down 5 spots this week. A very lackluster win over Auburn this week. Had to come from behind in that ball game. Late score in the fourth quarter got them to win 21-17 against the Auburn Tigers. So the data did not like the performance from Missouri. Docked them a few spots for that. Speaking of Missouri's opponent this week, fresh off of their loss in Knoxville to the Tennessee Volunteers, we find the Alabama Crimson Tide down 13 spots this week, suffering their second loss. Folks, Alabama has not looked good since the first half of the Georgia game. You're talking about 3.5 games ago. Alabama down 19. Another loss. We will have a top 25 that does not have Alabama in it for the first time in our 5 years of doing this. So Alabama needs to win out to not only stay in our top 25, but to keep their hopes alive for a college football playoff berth. Checking in at number 18, and they went up to West by God, West Virginia, and took care of business. That is the Kansas State Wildcats. K-State, 45-18 thumping over the Mountaineers. They looked absolutely dominant from the opening whistle to the final seconds ticking off of that clock. Coach Kleiman, you have a ball club this year, and they are locked and loaded, pun intended, for my good friends Matlock and Julie Balls. I'll talk about them coming up on the big show later on this week. Checking in at number 17, that is the Running Rebels of UNLV. UNLV fresh off of a 33-25 win over Oregon State this past weekend. Phenomenal job there by head coach Barry Odom. Boy, would some Power 4 teams love to have Barry Odom running their program right now. You better believe it. They got a big-time matchup this week, and it just so happens to be the team that they are sitting one spot behind in this week's top 25, and that is the Boise State Broncos, checking in at the number 16 spot. Boise State, coming off of their bye week, has had 2 weeks to kind of get prepped and ready for this devastating ground attack that UNLV will be unleashing there this weekend. So Boise State, hopefully you got your rest in your big boy pads, because UNLV is going to look to run the rock this week. Checking in at number 15, the Pony Express. SMU, the Mustangs, are looking good, and they have playoff aspirations, not just conference championship aspirations, but playoff aspirations. And SMU off of a 40-10 thumping over the Cardinals of Sanford, looking good. And this is what the fans in the Metroplex have wanted to see for over 4 decades. Their beloved Mustangs on the national stage getting an opportunity to make the college football playoffs. Checking in at number 14, what can you say about the Army Black Knights? They just continue to rock and roll, rolling up points. Coach Monken doing a fantastic job there, coming off of a 45-28 win over Eastern Carolina. Army is putting themselves in position to play possible spoiler here, as they are our highest group of 5 team right now at the moment. So Army, continue to take care of business. We know who you got coming up later on in the schedule. Just handle business each and every week. Checking in at number 13, and they are fresh off of that 24-17 win over Alabama. The Tennessee Volunteers, they stay flat. We saw Alabama drop 13 spots, saw Tennessee not move a single spot this week. We'll talk about the reasons for that and why Tennessee is going to have a very difficult time unless teams ahead of them start losing ball games, where Tennessee may max out at the 10 spot because of something that we'll talk about here once we get through with the top 25. Checking in at number 12, it is the Clemson Tigers. Clemson just continues to take care of business as they move up 2 spots from 14 last week. Dabo Swinney trying to figure out what this team's strengths and weaknesses are. One strength is that strength of schedule. Right now, Clemson has had a very user-friendly schedule over the past couple of weeks. That's going to toughen up here in the next coming weeks. So Clemson, continue to take care of business. You're hanging just outside of the top 10. Checking in at number 11 is the BYU Cougars. They move up 1 spot this week as well. You're going to hear that theme here over the next couple of teams that are released in the bowl. BYU head coach Kalani Sitake doing a fantastic job. Most of us had him on the hot seat coming into the season. That seat is now ice cold as BYU continues to take care of business, coming in with a 7-0 record this week, and they look to get in the Big 12 championship picture. Let's get inside of the top 10 here. And checking in at number 10 is the Pitt Panthers. Pitt, coming off of their bye week, sitting with a 6-0 record in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Pitt, just keep taking care of business. You got a high-powered offense and not afraid to unleash it on teams. So continue to take care of business, play some hard-nosed defense. You'll be right there in the playoff hunt. Checking in at number 9, we find the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, fresh off of that 31-13 win there in the Georgia Dome over Georgia Tech. Notre Dame left for dead several weeks ago with some key losses from other teams, and they continue to take care of business. Notre Dame firmly entrenched right now inside of our top 10. Off of a country thumping there in Austin, we find the Georgia Bulldogs checking in just up one spot from last week as they battle Texas. Got that win 30-15 there in Austin. So big time win for Georgia. Took care of business. Credit to head coach Kirby Smart for absolutely getting after his team all week long, I should say, in practice. That defense answered the bell like the Georgia Bulldogs that we expected to start the year off this year. 7 sacks against Texas in that ball game. Fantastic job by that entire front seven this past weekend. Georgia will answer the question why you're only sitting there at 8 here in just a few moments. Coming off of their bye week, and they're staying steady and not moving up or down this week. And that's where we find the 5-1 Ohio State Buckeyes. We know Ohio State coming off of that loss 2 weekends ago. They're in Autzen Stadium against Oregon. Buckeyes, you still have plenty left in front of you with meat on the bone to get back inside of the top 5. So Ohio State fans, don't worry about where they're ranked right now. If Ohio State takes care of business for the rest of the season, I fully expect Ohio State will move back up within the top 5. Checking in at number 6, down 2 spots this week, despite winning in Louisville, and that is the Miami Hurricanes. Miami last week was ranked number 4, down 2 spots this week to number 6. That win, 52-45 on the road at Louisville. The metrics did not like what the data shows in that ball game. Giving up 45 points to Louisville, not the kind of defensive performance that you want for a team that believes that they have the talent to get to a college football playoff. So that's why we saw the Miami Hurricanes down 2 spots this week. Checking in at number 5, and they stayed steady this week, is the Iowa State Cyclones. 38-35 win over UCF. Once again, thought we might have seen them slide a couple of spots, and I think if Ohio State would have played this week, Ohio State would have probably moved up, and Iowa State would have probably slipped down to number 7. So that was a very unimpressive performance there by Iowa State. But you're the highest ranking Big 12 team right now inside of our top 5. Just continue to take care of business. Find your way into the Big 12 championship game. Our former number 1 team falls 3 spots this week. That is the Texas Longhorns. Texas checks in with a 6-1 record. Who has Texas beat right now? The answer is probably going to be nobody. But Texas firmly sitting at the number 4 spot this week. We'll see if they're able to get back on the winning tracks, as they will be here in my backyard playing against the Vanderbilt Commodores. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Biggest benefactor of this week's poll is the number 3 team. And checking in, moving up 5 spots this week from number 8 last week to the number 3 spot, that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State, coming fresh off of a bye, that 6-0 record, strong enough to get you inside of the top 5 at this point. Thanks to Alabama losing, thanks to Texas losing, you are the second highest ranked Big Ten team at the moment. We're going to get to the highest Big Ten ranked team right now. And ladies and gentlemen, you know who it is. America's team, the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana, 7-0 on the season. We know the schedule hasn't been as tough as some others. However, the way that they have taken care of business each and every week, fresh off of a 56-7 thumping of Nebraska, who was supposed to present some challenges to Indiana this week. We didn't think so last weekend on the big show, and boy, did Indiana make us look good in doing so. So, Indiana, right now, highest Big Ten. You know what? They are not the highest ranked Big Ten team because we no longer have the Pac-12. We have the highest ranked team checking in out of the Big Ten, and that is the Oregon Ducks, folks. We're still getting used to Oregon being in the Big Ten, so pardon me for that slip of the tongue there. So Oregon checks in as the number 1 ranked team in our Week 8 poll this week. Fantastic job there by Coach Lanning. 35-0 rip over Purdue. They were not looking ahead. They were not basking in the glow of beating Ohio State a couple of weeks. Workmanlike performance there by the Ducks. And Coach Megan, your Ducks go quack, quack. All right, folks, let's get to our games where our top 25 teams are in action this week. Let's start with the number 1 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks. They will welcome in the Fighting Illini of Illinois, fresh off of a very impressive win over Michigan last weekend. Not so much the Michigan part, but getting that win was the impressive. Checking in at number 2 this week, America's team. They will welcome in the Washington Huskies into Bloomington. Got a big-time injury to talk about on the big show there, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that breakdown. What used to be one of the greatest rivalry games in all of college football, not so much this year, as the Florida State Seminoles travel down to Coral Gables to take on number 6 Miami this week. Nebraska, fresh off of that 56-7 thumping of Nebraska, Nebraska goes back on the road this week, and they will face a very angry Ohio State Buckeye team in the Horseshoe. Could be some fireworks in that ball game. Top 25 game where both teams are ranked. Number 23 Navy will play in a neutral site game against number 9 Notre Dame. Syracuse travels to Pitt to take on the Panthers. A big-time matchup there. Number 16 Boise State travels to Las Vegas to take on number 17 UNLV. The Kansas Jayhawks, no Rock Chalk, no Jayhawk, no KU, as they will take on in-state opponent there in the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas, taking on number 18 Kansas State. in what truly may be another loser leave town match. We thought we had that last weekend with Tennessee, Alabama. This is truly a loser leave town match. Number 20, Missouri, travels to Tuscaloosa to take on a very wounded and, quite frankly, mentally fragile Alabama Crimson Tide at number 19. Another very important game in the Southeastern Conference, number 22, LSU, travels to College Station to take on number 21, Texas A&M. Oklahoma, boy, they got more troubles than you can shake a stick at. Fired the offensive coordinator, can't figure out who's going to be the quarterback. They travel to the Grove to take on Hotty Toddy, Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin, this is a get-right situation if there ever was one on your schedule. Take care of business. Number 3, Penn State goes on the road to Camp Randall to take on Wisconsin. Number 4, Texas travels to Music City to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Watch out for the point spread in this one, folks. Hint, hint. Number 11, BYU travels to Orlando to take on UCF. The Gus Bus is running on no gasoline and a couple of flat tires. Watch out for this one. Number 15, SMU will travel to Raleigh, North Carolina to take on now conference rival, the Duke Blue Devils. May have some thoughts on that ball game on the big show. And finally, number 25, Washington State will travel to San Diego to take on the Aztecs of San Diego State. Our teams on the bye, we got 5 teams on the bye this week. Number 5, Iowa State. Number 8, Georgia. Number 12, Clemson. Number 13, Tennessee. And number 14, Army. We got some questions out of this question as want to address why some of the teams didn't move up, why some of them did. So let's start with our first question. And this was from one of our LSU fans. We love our friends down there in the Bayou. So why is LSU only ranked number 22 in our poll where they are much higher in other polls? Fantastic question. So here's what's really hurting LSU right now. They have a top 10 rated offense using our metrics. 33rd in defense, 118th in special teams. That is a problem. Like I said, like Jessica said in the lead-in, we look at all phases of the game. Your offense, your defense, your special teams, your record, and your strength of schedule. Right now, LSU has the 43rd rated strength of schedule for us. So that's something that's hurting LSU. If they can get better in the special teams game, you could see LSU absolutely move up. Provided they win this week against Texas A&M, you could definitely see LSU definitely get higher in our rankings. Just got to get that special teams going a little bit better. We're going to stay right there in the Southeastern Conference as one of our beloved Tennessee fans asked this question, and it was, why didn't Tennessee move up after beating Alabama? Quite frankly, what's hurting Tennessee is something that we have talked about all season long. Tennessee has the 64th rated offense using our metrics. Number 1 in defense, 37th in special teams, but 117th strength of schedule. Folks, you go back and look at that schedule for the Tennessee Volunteers, you can see why they are absolutely, as far as strength of schedule, one of our weakest strength of schedule teams. Those teams, Chattanooga, North Carolina State, Kent State. We know where Oklahoma's record is going. And quite frankly, that loss to Arkansas is absolutely hurting the Tennessee Vols right now. Our next question coming in from one of our Georgia Bulldogs fans. Tell SEC fans are passionate about their team. So the question: why did Georgia only move up one spot after beating our previous ranked number one team in Texas on the road? Fantastic question. So, a couple of things hurting the University of Georgia right now in our metrics. That game against Kentucky, winning that game by one when they were a multi-double, a significant favorite in that ball game. The loss to Alabama, absolutely. And then when we look at some of the rankings for this team, that's what's really dragging them down. So on the positive, Georgia has the 7th best defense, 8th best special teams, 34th in offense. Folks, Georgia's turning the ball over way too doggone much for them to have a better offensive ranking than what they have. And then 67th in strength of schedule. Now, for full disclosure, Georgia's strength of schedule is better than Miami and Iowa State, who is ranked ahead of them. Miami's strength of schedule, 104, Iowa State, 106. For context, Ohio State strength of schedule, 36. So Georgia sits significantly behind Ohio State as far as that strength of schedule. But what's helping Miami and Iowa State is some of their other outlining metrics. They're much higher ranked on the offensive side and not too far behind Georgia on the defensive side. So that's what's holding Georgia back at the moment. Georgia, if you continue to win out, don't worry about where you're ranked this week. It will change. Our next question comes from one of our Penn State fans here. And their question was, why is Indiana ranked one spot ahead of Penn State? First reason is Indiana is America's team, so Indiana's going to get the benefit of the doubt. I'm just kidding, sort of. But here's where the breakdown really separates. Indiana, strength of schedule, 89th, Penn State, 109. Indiana special teams, 6th, Penn State, 35th. Defense, Indiana, 28th, Penn State, 22nd. Offense, America's team, 3rd best offense, Penn State, 15th. That is the reason why Indiana is slightly ahead of Penn State. Just when we break down those 4 key metrics, Indiana is just slightly better than Penn State in all 4 of those categories. Our next question is, why did Miami drop 2 spots after beating Louisville on the road? Once again, just unimpressive on the defensive side of the ball. You give up 45 points to Louisville, definitely going to pull down your defensive metrics there. We just talked about Miami's strength of schedule being 104. That is pulling down Miami in the overall score tally, which once we add that up, gives us our top 25. And our final question, this was just a mailbag question of what was my biggest surprise of the rankings this week? I would say it would be twofold. It would be I thought that LSU getting that win over Arkansas would have given them just a little bit more of a bump. It did not. So we're okay with where LSU sits at the moment. We know that big game against Texas A&M would definitely be a referendum on which team is trending significantly up and which team is going to be in a dogfight trying to hang on to maybe getting an at-large bid into the college football playoffs. Folks, that is our show for the evening. I will try to do a special podcast of where teams started the year as far as our power rankings go and where they sit after 8 full weeks of college football. Going to try to squeeze that in this week. So we're already doing the prep for the big show and looking forward to getting that show in your feed here in just a couple of days. Usually we try to run that Wednesday night around this same time slot. So definitely want to stay connected with us on Twitter. The handle is Crunch Time VIP. You can always find us there. Always love your feedback. Always love your questions. So love engaging with college football fans, and we'll talk about some announcements on Twitter later on as well. On behalf of our fantastic team here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, our talented hosts, Jessica and Summer, our senior handicapping analyst, Billy, who does a great job each and every week getting our opening line set up. This is Kenneth, senior analyst and founder of the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, wishing you a great Monday. Enjoy some NFL football, and we'll see you back here very soon.